So today we are going to talk about what is the pond depth, beach, solid outlet radius, centrate radius. I'll just draw this over here. This is the centrate radius. All right. So whenever a decanter is running at full speed, let's just say 3000 RPM, the solids and the liquid will form a layer in the inside. We call it as the ID of the bowl, in which the solids will be clinging on the ID of the bowl, and the liquid will be more towards the center. So there will be like two layers. One will be the solids more towards the ID of the bowl, and the other one would be more of the liquid more towards the center of the bowl. So, so considering that as a basis, uh, what is the impact of pond depth on the separation of solids? So, as you can see, this entire blue portion is the pond depth. Now, we can control this pond depth, and we can there is one more concept I want to just make you familiar is that is the beach. The beach is, we call it as a dry zone for drying of solids. So more of this area has just the solids. The drier the solid gets, the more the liquid is there in this beach area, the solids coming out would be wet. So that being said, I'll just add one more concept here: solid outlet radius. Solid outlet radius is anything from the center of the shaft, center of the bowl to the outlet area. That is what we call it as a solid outlet radius. And then there is something called centrate outlet radius. That is center of the bowl to whatever is the radius maintained by the dam plate. So this is what is our dam plate, and the height maintained in this particular case is this. So let's just say that my solid outlet radius is 100 millimeters, and my centrate outlet radius is 100 millimeters. That means that centrate outlet radius is equal to the solid outlet radius. We call that as a neutral beach, or not beach but neutral. Now, if my solid outlet radius, keep in mind that solid outlet radius will be constant, we can't change that. The only variable we got is on the centrate side, and those are the dam plates. Now let's just say that the dam plate is such that my centrate outlet radius is 95 millimeters. That means that I will be having more pond depth such that there will be liquid coming out from the solid outlet. So that is something what we call it as a positive, and there is the third one, that is the negative. Negative means that, let's say, my centrate radius, outlet radius is maintained such that, like in this case, It's 110 millimeters. Now, because of this 110 millimeters, uh, I'll be having a very, very small pond depth, almost up to here. So, see the beach that I'm getting over here. It is going to have a more drying zone, so the solids produced will be more drier. So, knowing this three concepts, let's jump into what we call it as a shallow pond depth. Shallow pond depth is that means we don't have a whole lot of we have a small level of liquid inside the bowl, but we have a longer beach. Longer beach, like I said, it will be giving more dry solids, and it is typically done when we need dry solids out of the centrifuge. Now, shallow pond depth will also lead to solids in the centric. There is a because the height of the liquid is very less, so there is a chance of solids coming out. So we will not have a cleaner centrate, but we will have the advantage of the dry solids. So that is one advantage of the dry solids. Uh, Advantage of the shallow pond depth. Shallow pond depth will reduce the capacity of the centrifuge, especially the solids outlet capacity. So that is one drawback. Uh, this type of configuration of shallow pond depth will be used only and only when we have requirement of making dry solids. Just keep in mind that dry solids also come with another disadvantage that when it comes out of the centrifuge, there is a chance of uh, compacting of solids in the dry zone, which will increase the torque for the screw conveyor, and hence there is a chance of tripping on the high torque conveyor high torque. So that is something to be kept in mind when we are looking for dry solids. Now there is the preferred way. I mean, typically I prefer this way is the deep pond or short beach. Now you can see that in this one, uh, there is a very less amount of like if we compare the beach is very very short, almost close to like none here. So the since the drying zone is very very less, so the solids produced over here will be wet solids, uh, deep, and we called it as a deep pond depth because the level of liquid inside the bowl is higher. Uh, the advantage of the deep pond depth is that we are getting clean centrate, and for me, I always prefer this deep pond depth. Also gives an advantage of wet solids. So wet solids, since the solids are wet, they come with an advantage of the conveyor torque not being that high while making wet solids. So that is a big advantage. And even when they come out of the centrifuge, they don't compact. and build up. So, so those are the advantage of the making wet solids. Wet solids also increase the life of the liner on the conveyor because the solids are wet and easy to transport compared to the dry solids over here. So those are the advantage. Uh, it also has the advantage that since the height of the liquid is more in the deep pond depth, it comes with a longer residence time, and hence there is a better separation of solid and liquid, and that's one of the reasons that we are getting clean centrate. Uh, the big disadvantage on this one is that the beach is short, so the drying zone is short, and hence the solids are wet. So uh, again, I prefer this way, keeping in mind the longevity of the machine, uh, less torque on the conveyor, but it all, I mean, apart from that, it all depends on the requirement of the process. If it is required to make dry solids, then you have no choice. You have to go for the shallow pond depth. So it is kind of a balancing act you have to play, uh, which works good. And the balancing act has to be done by changing the template on the centered outlet. Uh, dry solids, but if you can live with little bit of more wet, then you have to change the templates and play around that. Most of the time in ZLD, the preferred is to make wet solids, so it will be always a deep pond depth because wet solids is acceptable on the ZLD application. The preference is to get more of the clean centrate rather than the having a TSS or solids in the centrate. So deep pond depth is preferred in that application. I hope this video helps. Thank you.